Schottky and Frankel defects are present in which compound? AgCl, AgBr, AgI, ZnS. You can see the PPT, no? Yeah,
Yes,
AgBr, that's correct. AgBr is a solid which shows both Frankel defect and Schottky defect. It is because in order to show Frankel defect, the radii of cation anion should be, there should be a lot of difference. But here it should be comparable. But in this case, when you consider, it is midway between those two, and therefore it shows both of them. Okay, so that is correct. And it is generally asked question both in CET and board exam. I mean, not board also they will ask, and then in NEET also, or any other competitive examination. This is an important one. Which among the following is not a diamagnetic substance? Diamagnetic substances have got all paired electrons. Paramagnetic substances will have unpaired electrons, isn't it? So paramagnetic substances are weakly attracted in a magnetic field. Diamagnetic substance will be repelled in a magnetic field. Yes. Water is a doesn't have any unpaired electrons. Diamagnetic. Sodium chloride, no unpaired electrons. Benzene, of course, no unpaired electrons. Oxygen, O2, has got unpaired electrons in the anti-bonding molecular orbital, and hence this one is paramagnetic and not diamagnetic. Okay, so that's the correct option. Next one is this. The ratio of packing fraction of FCC, BCC and simple cubic is. So for that you should have a fair idea as to what is the packing fraction, which will be for FCC if you take, and then BCC, and then simple cubic. So this is around 74%, this is around 68%, and this is around 52%, isn't it? So divide by 74, divide this also by 74, this one also by 74. What do you get? So you will get 1:68 divided by 74. 0.992 you will get. Okay, so this is 1, this is 0.92, and 52 divided by 74. 0.70. Yes. So first is the correct option. That's correct. Okay, fine. So all of you must have got this simple one. Yes. Especially in solid state, you should be very thorough with the concept. Questions can be like anything. If you are conceptually very clear, you will be able to answer all the questions. Absolutely no difference. Okay. Xenon crystallizes in FCC lattice. The edge length of the unit cell is given to you. Then the radius of the xenon atom. I have taken it from the papers only. So these kind of questions are generally asked. So because it is face centered, you know that root 2a is equal to 4r. This is what the one which you are supposed to use. Okay, and a is given to you, r should be equal to root 2 1.414. The value of root 2 is 1.414. So you can substitute it over there. 1.414 into 620 divided by 4. What is the value? 620 into 1.414. This should be is equal to divided by 4. 219, isn't it? 219. So first one. All of you got this? Yes?
yes.
Okay. Move on to the next one. This one. The number of atoms in a cube-based unit cell having one atom on each corner and 2 atoms on the body diagonal is. You have to think and answer. It has got 1 atom at the corners and 2 atoms on the diagonals of the body. It will be like this. Okay, so this is there. These are 8. 8 into 1 upon 8. But right inside the body diagonal means that is not shared by any other unit cell. There are 4 body diagonals. Okay, so this one and this one and one more. 4 body diagonals. 4 into 2, 8. 8 plus 1, 9. 9 is the correct option. Okay? Yes? Any doubt here?
No.
Okay. Let's move ahead. A solid has BCC structure. If the distance of closest approach between the two atoms is 1.73 angstrom, the edge length of the unit cell is BCC structure. Distance of closest approach between the two atoms is given to you. Edge length you have to find out. Yes, how do you do that? Root 3a is equal to 4r, correct. That's correct. So use that formula and then distance of closest approach is only 2r. 2r will be equal to root 3a divided by 2. This is what you're supposed to use. So 1.73 into 1.73 divided by 2 divided by 2. So what do you get here? 1.73 into 1.73. Divided by 2. Uh, 1.73 root 3a, isn't it? BCC. The distance, oh no. 2r is given to you, not this. This is given to us. Just a moment. Okay. So this will be 2r is equal to 1.73 angstrom. This is what is given to you. Okay. So 2r is basically equal to root 3a upon 2. So you have to substitute for this. 1.73 is equal to root 3a divided by 2. So a should be equal to 2 into 1.73 divided by root 3. This gets cancelled. It will be equal to 2 angstrom, which is nothing but 200 picometers. That's correct. Okay? Yes. All of you got this? Any doubt here?
No.
I take it as yes. Yes. The number of unit cells present in 9.2 gram of sodium, if it crystallizes in BCC, is. Okay. So first of all, find the number of moles of sodium. N of sodium should be equal to 9.2 divided by 23. That is the atomic mass. So 9.2 divided by 23 will be 0.4. So you have got basically 0.4 moles of NaCl formula units. Okay, but sorry, not NaCl, Na. Sodium atoms are there. It is Na they have given, not NaCl. These many atoms of sodium you have. So if you multiply it by Avogadro number, so the number of Na atoms should be equal to 0.4 into Na. Okay, but because it is BCC, 2 atoms form 1 unit cell. Okay, so 2 atoms equal to 1 unit cell. Therefore, 0.4 into Na atom should be equal to 0.4 into Na upon 2, which will be equal to 0.2 Na. Am I right? Any doubt here? Generally asked question. Okay. If it is FCC, then you should divide it by 4. But because it is BCC, 2 atoms per unit cell. Any doubt here? No doubt. Okay. Which of the following statements are true about metals? It says valence bond overlaps with the conduction band. The gap between the valence band and the conduction band is negligible. The gap between the valence band and conduction band cannot be determined. The valence bond may remain partially filled. So which of these is correct? When you consider metals, supposing you have got how the bond theory is explained, hope all of you know this. So for the benefit of those who are actually not learned this, supposing you take Na, sodium, 3s1 is a valence shell and there is one electron in each atom of sodium in the valence shell. Now you are supposed to consider n number of Na atoms, which means you have got n number of 3s orbitals. So n number of 3s orbitals will combine to form n by 2 bonding orbitals, n by 2 anti-bonding orbitals also. Okay? So therefore, this corresponds to valence band. Valence band. This is your conduction band. That is how it is explained. So first one, the gap between the valence band and conduction band is definitely less. It is almost quite close by. The gap between the valence and conduction band is negligible. That is also correct. But the gap between the valence bond and conduction band cannot be determined because it is very small. The moment when we start determining, we have to provide energy and then there will be mixing up of the excitation of the electrons. So it is difficult to determine. Valence bond may be partially filled because some of the electrons can be excited to the conduction band even at ordinary conditions, under ordinary conditions, because the gap is less. And therefore, except 3, all the others are correct here. Okay? So therefore, your correct option has to be yes. Okay. 1, 2, and 3. You just, the correct option is not here. You can take it as 1, 2, and 4. These are the correct. This is the correct option. Okay. First one is wrong. One second. First one is given. It is not going to. This can be determined. Oh, that doesn't overlap with each other. Okay, so 2, 3, and 4 is correct. This is correct. This is correct. This one is also correct. By making, determining the conductivity, this also can be determined. Valence bond doesn't overlap with the conduction band. So 2, 3, and 4. That is correct. This one. This is the correct option. Okay. Any doubt here? Can I get an S from all the students who are participating?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. What about others? Hope it is clear to all of you. Okay, fine. If the radius of CS plus is 169 and that of BR minus is 1.95, then edge length is 4.2 angstrom. Then coordination number of CS is 6. CSBR and has a BCC structure. BR minus ions touch along the edge. Okay, what you are supposed to do first of all, find the radius ratio. R plus divided by R minus. Equal to 1.69 upon 1.95. How much you will be getting here? 1.69 divided by 1.95. You are getting this as 0.87, which means it has to be octahedral, cubic, isn't it? It should be present in cubic, means BCC structure. Coordination number has to be 8, isn't it?
अब्बा का फोन कहाँ है? तो सीधा सुनने नहीं आ रहा, कनेक्शन चल जा रहा है.
Who is that background voice? BCC structure, okay? So if it is BCC structure, then you are supposed to find the edge length. How are you going to find the edge? If it is BCC, the cation is present right inside, the anions are present at the corners, isn't it? And using that, you are supposed to find the edge length. Okay. So for that, what you do, the body diagonal, if you take, there will be 2r plus 2r minus. This should be equal to, yeah, so many people may be there. Internet is little slow, not a problem. Okay, it comes every time it comes. Okay, fine. R plus R minus should be equal to root 3. Am I right? This is correct?
Yes.
So 2 into 1.69 plus 1.95 should be equal to root 3 is 1.73 into A. So A should be equal to 1.69 plus 1.95. 3.64 into 2. 7.28.
7.28.
You're getting 4.28?
7.28.
7.28. That's correct. So this is 7.28 is equal to 1.73A. So therefore A should be equal to
4.20.
Yeah. So which means the first one is correct, right? First one is correct. BCC structure is also correct. Coordination number cannot be 6, it has to be 8 because it is BCC. BR minus do not touch along the edge because the nearest neighbor distance is not 2R, it is equal to root 3A by 2, isn't it? Therefore, they do not touch. These two are wrong. These two are correct. 1 and 3. Option is 4. Yes. Hope it is clear to all the students who are participating here. Eldrigo
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Okay, good. Very nice. See, these kind of questions, it takes time. Unless you know all these concepts, you will not be able to answer such questions. This is for NEET. Okay? Maybe in your CET, they might just give you one correct option. Like, this would be the correct option. What is the coordination number? If CS plus is equal to this, BR minus is equal to this. So find the coordination number. That's all. Coordination number has to be 8 because it is BCC, right? But if you have to answer all these kind of questions, you should be thorough with the concept. Yep. Yes. This I want all of you to do. The number of unit cells present in 1 gram of NaCl is. NaCl structure, all of you know. Cl minus the forms the CCP array. So Cl minus would be present at the corners and face centers. So Na plus is going to occupy all the octahedral holes. Octahedral holes are present at the edge centers and one right at the center. When you do this, you will get 4 Cl minus ions and 4 Na plus as well. So therefore, one unit cell when you take, you will have 4 formula units. So you should be writing it as Na4, Cl4. But actually we take the minimum whole number ratio, so we write it as NaCl. And more so because it is a 3-dimensional structure. You don't have NaCl independent, existing independently. It is a network solid, isn't it? So that is the reason this one. So one unit cell has got 4 formula units. Now if you take formula mass of this NaCl 23 plus 35.5, it will be 58.5. So if you take 58.5 grams of NaCl, it will have Avogadro number of formula units. Okay. So now you find out the number of moles of NaCl. 1 upon 58.5. So this will be equal to 1 divided by 58.5. 0.017. Am I right?
Yes, ma'am.
So 0.017 moles means the Avogadro number into Avogadro number of NaCl formula units will be equal to this into Avogadro number, isn't it? So number of formula units of NaCl should be equal to 0.017 into Na. Let's write it as Na as of now. And then 4 formula units, or you can substitute here, not a problem. 0.017 into 6 into 10 raised to 23. So these many formula units you have. 4 formula units of NaCl is equal to 1 unit cell. In 1 unit cell, you will have 4 formula units. So therefore, these many formula units, which will be 0.017 into 6 into 10 raised to 23, will have how many unit cells? So this will be 0.017 into 6 into 10 raised to 23 upon 4. Okay? So into 6 divided by 4. This is coming out as 0.02. Let me write it. 0.0256 into 10 raised to 23. So I can write this as 2.57. I can write into 10 raised to 21. Am I right? So therefore, your correct option has to be option 3. Any doubt here? If you have any doubt, you should ask me, okay? Hope it is done. Move on to the next question, correct? Okay, let me clear all this. Go to the next question, which is this. Iron oxide crystallizes in a hexagonal close-packed array of oxide ions, with 2 out of every 6 octahedral holes occupied by ferric ions. The formula of ferric oxide is. So how are you going to do this? Hexagonal close-packed structure. Generally, what students do, they will think that they have not studied much about hexagonal close-packed system. You don't have to. The usual concept is sufficient to answer this question, except that you should know how many particles per unit cell of hexagonal close-packed structure is possible. It is, there are 12 corner atoms, isn't it? Each corner will be shared by 6 unit cell, 12 into 1 by 6. And there are 2 face-centered atoms, 2 into 1 by 2. And there are 3 right at the center, which are not shared by any other unit cell, plus 3. So this will be 2 plus 1 plus 3, it is 6. So you have got 6 spheres or 6 atoms per unit cell of hexagonal close-packed structure. So 6 atoms means you will have 6 octahedral holes and 12, double this will be tetrahedral holes or voids. Okay. So he says the ferric ions are present or occupying 2 out of every 3. That means 3, 3 if you make 2 plus 2, it will be 4. 4 Fe3 plus ions will be there. And 6 O2 minus ions will be there, because that is the one which forms the hexagonal close packed array, which means it should be present at the corners, face centers, and 3 right at the center. So it will be Fe4O6, which means it should be Fe2O3. So this is okay. Yes. Any doubt? No doubt. Let me move ahead. Yes. This is a good one. A compound forms hexagonal closed packed structure. 0.5 mole of the compound has total number of the total number of voids. Compound 0.5 mole of the compound, 0.5 mole of the compound, the total number of voids and the number of tetrahedral voids are respectively. How do you do this? Moles, when it is given, moles also is something related to number, isn't it? You can take this as number itself. So 0.5 mole of the compound means 0.5 moles of the molecules you have. If this is N, then this N is also the number of octahedral holes. 2N should be the number of tetrahedral holes. So therefore, octahedral holes is equal to 0.5, Tetrahedral holes is equal to 0.5 into 2, 1.0. So therefore, total number will be 1.5. And hence, the correct option has to be total number 1.5, tetrahedral voids 1. Okay? Yes? Any doubt?
No.
No doubt. Yes. Okay, let's move on to the next one. This I think I had told you in the previous session while explaining, giving the synopsis for that. Okay? If NaCl is doped with 10 to the power minus 3 mole percent of SrCl2, the concentration of cation vacancies in the crystal is. How are we going to do that? So I think I had told you this. When Sr2 plus is introduced as an impurity, it will definitely increase the conductivity of NaCl. Otherwise, NaCl will be non-conductive because ions are not free. So you have to introduce some impurity so that either there will be extra electrons or extra holes. Okay. So Sr2 plus, because of its +2 charge, it has to substitute 2 Na plus ions. Then only there will be charge neutralization. So one of the place of Na plus will be occupied Sr2 plus, the other one will be a hole. So which means the number of Sr2 plus should also be equal to the number of holes created. So that is how you are going to do that. Okay. And Sr2 plus is doped with this NaCl is doped with 10 to the power minus 3 mole percent, which means if you have 100 moles of NaCl, it will have 10 to the power minus 3 moles of Sr2 plus, which is also equal to 10 to the power minus 3 mole of vacancy, is vacancies, a hole, isn't it? So 100 mole has got this. 1 mole will have how much? 1 mole of NaCl should be equal to 10 to the power minus 3 divided by 100. It will be 10 to the power minus 5, isn't it? Mole. 1 mole of NaCl will have 10 to the power minus 5 moles of vacancies, or 10 to the power minus 5 moles of Sr2 plus ions in the crystal. So therefore, if you have to convert this one into number, multiply it by Avogadro number. So the number of vacancies equal to 10 to the power minus 5 into Na, correct? Any doubt? Generally asked question. Fine? Okay. So can I get an S from all the students now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
This one. Analysis, this is also similar one I had told you in the previous class. Analysis shows that the nickel oxide has got formula Ni0.980. The percentage of nickel exists as Ni2 plus Is. Basically, it is also a combination of Ni3 plus and Ni2 plus. Okay? Ni2 plus, it will lose all the S electrons. If it loses one of the D, it will be Ni3 plus. More than that, it will be difficult because the ionization enthalpy will be very high. So it exists in these two forms. Now, same procedure. Let the number of Ni2 plus be X. Ni2 plus is equal to X. Ni3 plus should be equal to 0.98 minus X. That means this is the one which is there. Okay. Now you balance the charge. 2x Ni2 plus will be charge is 2 into X plus Ni3 plus 3 is the charge, 3 into 0.98 minus X should be equal to charge on the oxygen, which is 2. You have to take only the magnitude, not the sign. Okay, 2x plus 3 into 0.98. 2.94 minus 3x is equal to 2. So minus x is equal to, this goes to the other side, becomes minus 0.94. So x is, that means you have got nickel 0.94. That is actually not the percentage because it is out of 0.98. So the percentage of Ni plus 2 should
94.
you're getting 0.94 divided by 0.98 into 100. Divided by 0.98. We get 95.9, which will be 96%. Okay. Sometimes they will ask you the percentage of Ni3 plus. Once you know this, you can find out the other one also, around 4%. Okay. Hope it is clear to all of you. Move on to the next one. This is a good one. A solid AB has an NaCl structure with A atoms occupying the lattice points. What is the meaning of that? Lattice points. A atoms occupying or A ions occupying the lattice points. So which means A are present at the corners and face centers. And B will be present at the edge centers or occupying all the octahedral holes. So that is how you should understand that. Okay. If all the atoms present on one face of the unit cell are removed, the composition of the solid is. How are you going to do this? Let's draw the unit cell first. So you have got this NaCl structure. Okay, yes. Now you have got the corner atoms, which is by A, and the face center. Let's consider only one face because the atoms from one face only is removed. Okay, and you have got at the edge centers, you have got the B atoms. That is what it says. Okay, so which means you are removing 4A from the corner and 1 from the center. That means 5 A atoms are being removed. Out of 8, 5 is removed. So you are left with 3 of them, isn't it? Correct? This says if all the atoms present on one face of the unit cell are removed, what happens? So therefore, you are left with 4 corner atoms because 4 are removed. So 4 into 1 by 8 plus you are left with 5 face centered atoms because 1 is removed. 5 into 1 by 2. So this is the number of A atoms. So this will be equal to 1 by 2 plus 5 by 2, which will be equal to 6 by 2, which means it is 3. So you have got 3 A atoms. Then what about B, which is present in the octahedral walls, edge centers? 4 of them are removed from the edge. So out of 12 atoms from the edge, you are removing 4 of them. 8 are left. So therefore, B atoms will be, number of B atoms should be equal to 8 into 1 by 4 plus right at the center you have got one octahedral hole that will remain occupied because you are not removing that. So it will be 2 plus 1, 3 again. So A3, B3. So therefore, the formula has to be AB. A3, B3 basically. So you are supposed to take the minimum whole number ratio AB. It's a very, very good question. Previous year question. Okay. Sometimes they will ask you that they have removed all the atoms present in one along an axis. So you have to be very careful by using these concepts. Any doubt here? All of you followed? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, okay, fine. I think it is not there. I have not given you in your paper, I suppose. But I found this in your NEET question paper, so I just took it. The compound is formed by cation C and anion A. The anions form the hexagonal close packed structure, lattice. And the cations occupy 75% of the octahedral hole, voids. The formula of the compound is. How are you going to do this? It is formed by C plus ions and A minus ions. The anion form the hexagonal closed packed structure, which means Anion A, there are 6 of them if it forms hexagonal close packed lattice. 6 anions you have, and therefore 6 is the number of octahedral holes as well. So 75% of 6, 75 divided by 100 into 6. This much is occupied, which will be 0.75 into 6. So these many C atoms, C cations you will have. So it comes out as 0.75 into 6. 0.45, isn't it? So this is equal to 0.45, which means when you write this, cation first, C 4.
4.5.
Yeah, yeah.
4.5.
Correct. Not 0.45, 4.5. That's correct. So this is 4.5. So C 4.5, C 4.5, and then A you have 6. Okay, multiplied by 2. So you will get C9, A12, which becomes C3, A4. C3, A4, first one, isn't it? That is the correct option. Any doubt in this?
No.
No. Okay. I think this one was also not given. This is also from your previous NEET paper. Iron exhibits BCC structure at room temperature. Above 900 degrees centigrade, it transforms to FCC structure. The ratio of density of iron at room temperature to that at 900 degrees centigrade is √3. All of you must have done that. Very good. So this, for the benefit of those who haven't done this, I will show you the solution for this. You just have to find the density of in terms of, you don't have to calculate, you just find an equation for that in terms of pi. Okay, either you substitute for R or you substitute for A in material. So you will, if you substitute in terms of A, then you will get, this is the density of BC. Similarly, the density of FCC you will get like this. Divide one by the other. You will get this. Okay. Now sometimes they will simply ask you the density in terms of pi for BCC. You will have to identify the formula. Okay. EFCC also sometimes they will ask. Okay. What is for simple cubic? The density in terms of pi. I think you will get pi by 6. You can do it. Okay. And see. So these are all the various ways of asking the same concept. Sorry. Okay, so this is about the questions of solid state. Now we shall go to the solutions. Okay, solutions basically when the chapter begins, you have got various concentration terms. How a concentration is expressed in different ways. Formality is generally used for ionic substances like NaCl. Formula units of the formula mass of the solid is just like molecular mass only. Because it exists as a 3-dimensional unit, so you are supposed to say take the formula mass of the, for an ionic solid. Then you know molarity, number of moles divided by volume of solution in liter. But if you take it in ml, then number of moles divided by volume into 1000. So this is the one. Okay. Fine. And then you have molality, small m. And what is the unit of this? Mole per liter. Molality, if you take, it will be number of moles divided by volume of solution. It's on, mass of the solution, isn't it? Mass of the solution in grams into 1000. But if you take it in kg, then it is only the mass. Okay. This is mass of the solvent, WA into 1000. So this will be, the unit of this will be mole per kg. This is the unit, okay? And normality, not very important, but for the benefit of those who want to know, normality is equal to number of equivalents divided by volume of solution in liter. Okay, so normality is related to molarity into Z factor or sometimes N factor. Okay, supposing you have got 0.1 molar solution of H2SO4, then what is the normality of that? Z factor here is the number of replaceable hydrogens, H plus ions, 2 of them. So therefore, normality will be equal to 2 into molarity, right? So like that you can calculate. So the Z factor is very easy to calculate for acids and bases, number of replaceable H plus ions or OH minus ions respectively. For salts like Na2CO3, total number of positive charges or negative charges also. So molecular mass divided by total charge on the cations or anions. And for oxidizing and reducing agents, it is the number of electrons required for oxidation or reduction. So that is how it can be calculated. Then weight by weight and mass by mass per percentage and all those things, you know that. So parts per million. So amount of solute divided by amount of solution into 10 raised to 6. Okay, supposing you have got, say, 1 gram of NaCl dissolved in 1 kg of the solvent. So what is the ppm concentration of this? Same procedure. Amount of solute 1 gram divided by 1 kg 1000 gram into 10 to the power 6. This will be equal to 10 to the power 3 ppm, 1000 ppm. So that is how it is important, okay? And then various other terms. Henry's law. Henry's law is something related to the dissolution of gases in a liquid. So partial pressure of the gas is proportional to mole fraction of the gas in the solution. The proportionality constant is Kh, which we call it as Henry's law constant. Higher the value of Kh, lower will be the solubility. Henry's law is important. Under what conditions a gas is soluble in a given solvent to a maximum extent? That is what is important. So then you have got Raoult's law. Raoult's law for a non-volatile solute. All of you must have done it even for the board exam. This is very, very important. If you consider the lowering of vapor pressure of a solution consisting of non-volatile solute, relative lowering of vapor pressure is equal to mole fraction of the solute. So that is what is the Raoult's law for the solution consisting of non-volatile solute. Okay, so in this case, if it is very, very less, that is, if the solution is very dilute, then you can neglect the number of moles of the solute in the denominator. You can write it like this. But if the solution is concentrated, then you can also write this as, this is for a dilute solution. For a concentrated solution, I think if you write P10 is the vapor pressure of pure solvent, P1 is the vapor pressure of solvent in solution consisting of a non-volatile solute divided by P1 is also equal to N2 divided. This is for a concentrated solution. This is for a dilute solution. Okay. So that is, then when you substitute, you will get this. Basically, all these are used for the determination of molecular mass of an unknown solute. Then vapor pressure. This is for liquid mixtures. Raoult's law for liquid mixtures is, that is, partial pressure of any one of the components is equal to its component, its vapor pressure in the pure state into its mole fraction in the solution. Similarly, for the other component, total vapor pressure, you are going to write it like this. When you substitute for the mole fraction of one of the two components, you will get this equation. P total is equal to this. So which means the total vapor pressure varies linearly as with the mole fraction of any one of the components. That is how you are going to define that. And you can also find out the vapor pressure of the, or the mole fraction in the vapor phase. This Mole fraction, when you write xi here, or generally we call it as x, it is in solution. And in the vapor phase, if you consider this as y, then this is how it is correct. So in the solution, we are supposed to use, but in the vapor phase, you are supposed to use the Dalton's law. Some disturbance there. You can mute yourself where there is disturbance, okay? Fine. So this is very important. Sometimes they will ask you to find the mole fraction in the vapor phase, wherein you are going to use the Dalton's law, right? And this is the graph that you are going to get for an ideal solution. So this is the vapor pressure curve of the component 1, vapor pressure curve of the component 2. You can write this as P2 is equal to P20 into mole fraction of the second component. And this graph gives you the total vapor pressure, okay? So sometimes they will ask you, like, say, for example, I have got this at this point, okay? So this is the vapor pressure of the component 1. This is the vapor pressure of the component 2. When you add these two, you will get the vapor pressure, total vapor pressure. From the graph also, sometimes you will be asked to do that, okay? So supposing I write this as A, B, C, and D. So AD should be equal to AB plus AC, like that. So that is a total. Fine. So any doubt in these concepts, if you have, you can ask me. I will be able to explain that to you. Okay. Non-ideal solutions. Either they will show positive deviation or they can show negative deviation. So what kind of liquid mixture show positive deviation? AB interactions are weaker than AA and BB interactions, isn't it? When a new bond is formed, if it is weaker, then it will show positive deviation because it is easy for it to go into the vapor phase. But if a stronger bond is formed, then it is going to show negative deviation. Okay? So now for those liquid mixtures, not for all of them which show positive deviation, you will see in the graph there is a maximum in the graph. Sometimes you will see that maximum. Supposing if the graph is like this. This maximum corresponds to the maximum vapor pressure for this composition, and this composition, it will form an azeotropic mixture. Okay, so it has azeotropic mixture. This, for this composition, it forms an azeotropic mixture, and that mixture will have the highest vapor pressure and therefore lowest boiling point. TB will be the lowest, and therefore we call it as minimum boiling azeotrope. So azeotropic mixture means it boils like a pure solvent without any change in its composition, right? Okay. Similarly, a solution which shows negative deviation will have, for some particular composition, it will have the lowest vapor pressure, and therefore it will have the highest boiling point. So we call it as maximum boiling azeotropes. So maximum boiling azeotropes are shown by, are formed by only those liquid mixtures which show negative. Okay, minimum boiling azeotropes will be shown by those liquid mixtures which show positive. Okay, any doubt here
Ma'am,
in the graphs and all those things? No doubt.
ma'am,
Yes, go
ma'am,
ahead.
Henry's law related to solubility.
It is related to
How it is related means solubility, ma'am.
not solubility. Actually, it is going to form a mixture, a liquid mixture in the sense they are soluble only. Okay, but only thing is you should see whether the vapor pressure is higher or not. That is what. Okay, they are going to form a solution. They are soluble in it. Okay, so whether it is going to show a positive deviation from Raoult's law or negative, that is what is important. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So you have to be very thorough with the concept of azeotropic mixtures, positive and negative deviation. What are the different kinds of solutions or liquid mixtures form? Ideal solutions, each other are going to form show positive or negative deviation. That is very important. Okay. Now supposing I give you a liquid mixture consisting of H2O plus methanol. What kind of deviation do you expect here? Positive or negative deviation?
Negative.
Negative. Anybody? Anyone else? Any other answer?
Positive, ma'am.
Positive deviation, there are only two of them. H2O, positive deviation. That is because, yes, positive deviation it shows. That is because in both of them you will see hydrogen bond. CH3OH, it will be bonded to other neighboring molecules with hydrogen bonding. Even in water you will see hydrogen bonding. Okay? But when you mix them together, and because the hydrogen bonding in methanol is little weaker because of the presence of the CH3, it is little weaker compared to the hydrogen bonding present in water. So when you mix them together, the overall hydrogen bonding magnitude would decrease. And therefore you can say that AB interactions are weaker. And hence it is easy for the mixture to go into the vapor phase, and therefore total vapor pressure will be more than expected from Raoult's law. So that is the reason it shows positive. Okay. Supposing if I give you a mixture of H2O plus HCl, what kind of deviations do you see here? Positive or negative? H2O and HCl. And they will not give you a mixture, they will say that aqueous HCl. Aqueous HCl means it is H2O plus HCl only. Okay. So the moment when you put HCl to water, it is going to dissociate to give H plus and Cl minus ions. The Cl minus ions will be hydrated. Large number of water molecules will come and form. This H plus will be appearing as H3O plus, which also is hydrated. And because of this hydration, the escaping tendency decreases, and therefore it shows negative deviation. Okay. Right? Any doubt here? I think most of you follow. Some examples are here. Negative deviation and positive deviation. Chloroform and acetone shows negative deviation. Why? This is chloroform, CH3H plus acetone. Acetone is propanone. So which will be C double bond O, CH3, CH3. Now these two compounds are polar compounds. So independently you will be seeing when they are present separate bottles, you will see dipole-dipole interaction because they are polar. Dipole-dipole. Here also you will see dipole-dipole interaction. But when you mix them together, this hydrogen is a little acidic because of the presence of 3 electron withdrawing groups. This one. Otherwise, CH bond is generally non-polar. But because of the presence of Cl there, which shows inductive effect, minus I effect. So this proton becomes a little acidic, and therefore this becomes slightly positive. This is slightly negative. So they are going to form hydrogen bonding. The new kind of interaction that is formed is stronger than the ones which were present before, and hence shows negative. In all these examples, you will see negative deviation. Okay. Positive deviation. See, in all these cases, you will see weaker interactions are being formed, and hence positive deviation. Benzene, ethyl alcohol. Ethyl alcohol has got hydrogen bonding. When you put benzene into it, the benzene molecules will go and occupy the space between ethyl alcohol molecules, break the hydrogen bonding. And the one which is going to form is only induced dipole moment, which is weaker. And hence, AB interactions are weaker here. Okay. Any doubt here? In all these cases, that is same thing happens. So what happens to delta H value if it shows negative deviation? Enthalpy of mixing. When you mix the two components, energy is released or absorbed in negative deviation.
Released.
Energy is released because of stronger intermolecular forces. In this case, it becomes positive. Energy is absorbed. Similarly, Delta V mixing is also negative because of stronger interactions. Molecules come closer, the final volume will be less. In this case, interactions are weaker, molecules are apart, more volume is occupied, and hence delta V mixing is also positive. Very good. All these things are clear to you, okay? Fine.
Yes.
Examples are important. Sometimes they will ask you this. Then coming to the colligative properties, those properties which depend only on the number of particles, not on the nature of the solute or solvent. So in this case, you have 4 of them: relative lowering of vapor pressure, elevation in boiling point, depression in freezing point, and osmotic pressure. They're all the colligative properties, generally used for the determination of molar mass of the solute. Okay? So these are all the various equations. Sometimes they will not give you the value of Kb. They will give you the value of delta H vaporization, that is, and then boiling point they will give, and you will have to find out the value of Kb. So you can take this as delta H vaporization. In this case, delta H, or I mean, this is elevation in boiling point. Yes, that is correct. If they give you that, you should be able to find it out. Okay. So this is about this. And then coming to osmotic pressure. So you have got the same, just like gas loss here also, it can be in different ways. Basically, it is pi is equal to CRT. So this is the equation for osmotic pressure. So if you substitute for C, it will be number of moles divided by volume into RT. So you will get this as pi V is equal to N RT, which is just like your PV is equal to N RT. So these are all the different ways of writing. Okay, so this is like your Avogadro's law. This is like your Gay-Lussac's law. This is Boyle's law. Okay. So, but however, all of them lead to the same equation, pi V is equal to N RT. A solution whose osmotic pressure is higher than the other one is said to have a higher osmotic pressure, a hypertonic solution. Similarly, hypotonic solution will have lower osmotic pressure. So isotonic solutions will have.
बाबा करते यायचो कधी मी तिकडे राहते मी बाबा फोन लगाडा सोनू
Nice, you have to mute yourself.
गाड दुचा
Yeah. Okay. Let's go to this Vanta factor I, which is introduced just to take care of association or dissociation that may be happening in the solution with the solute. Okay. So in this case, you have to be very careful. If you put acetic acid, CH3COOH, if you put it in water, it is going to dissociate to give H3O plus CH3COO minus. But if you put acetic acid in benzene, if you put it in benzene, it will not dissociate, it will associate to give a dimer, C6H6, CH3, C double bond O, OH. Another molecule will come
घण सांडले आल्या
like this. So this is association and this is dissociation, okay? Or theoretical molar mass divided by experimental molar. But in all the other colligative properties, it is the experimental colligative property divided by the theoretical molar. So if you know this, you will be able to calculate the value of I. Okay? So what is the value of I for NaCl if it is 100% dissociated?
2.
In this case, number of moles after dissociation divided by number of moles before dissociation. That is the value of I. 100% dissociation means you will get 2 moles of ions if you have taken 1 mole of ion. So the value of I will be 2. Okay. So if you introduce that factor here in all these equations, you will get these equations. You just have to introduce. That's all. Any doubt here? All of you understood? Then these are all no doubt. Okay, fine. Some of the equations which might help you: density of the calculate if you are given molarity and molality. So this is the equation which mole fraction of the solute you can calculate if you have been given molality and molarity. And then this is molality if you know the mole fraction of the other, that is a solute. And this one, molality, how it is related to density in number. So these are all some of the equations which will help you. Okay? Right.
1 minute.
You want to note it, please. Some student is there who in the background, some child is playing. If you could mute yourself, it will be a great help. Okay? Otherwise, it will disturb others. And me also. Some good information or important information, if I want to give, is a disturbing.
Yes.
Okay. Take up this first question.
Which of the following conditions carbon dioxide gas is filled in cold rooms and in soda water at high pressure and high temperature? Ma'am, at high temperature and high pressure.
Yes. Let me try to mute all those students so that option is okay. Doesn't matter. In which of the following conditions carbon dioxide gas is filled in cold drinks and in soda water? So dissolution of a gas is directly proportional to pressure, inversely proportional to temperature. Decrease in temperature, increase in pressure favor the dissolution of the gas, and hence correct option is option. It's a repeated question, okay? In all competitive examination, maybe because of its application. Okay. This is the equation for the dissolution of a particular solute in a given solvent. It is shown that it is an endothermic process.
Ma'am,
What would be the change in the solubility of the substance?
at high temperature and low pressure, ma'am.
What previous one is it? 1 second, let me come to that. Yeah. Yes. At low temperature and high pressure. In which of the following conditions CO2 gas filled in cold drinks and in soda water? It should be filled at high pressure and low temperature. Under those conditions only, the solubility is maximum, correct? Any doubt here? Yes. It's not opening also.
Over there.
Okay.
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah. Option 2 is correct.
Ma'am,
Go ahead.
option 4, ma'am. At high temperature and low pressure.
At high temperature and low pressure, its solubility is least. And hence it is not filled under those conditions, correct?
Okay,
It is
ma'am.
not the correct option. At high temperature, solubility of the gas is lowest. That is the reason when you start boiling water, all the dissolved gases come out. Even before boiling, you will get bubbles of that, isn't it? And therefore, this is not the correct option. Correct option is option 2. Okay? Clear? Is it clear to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So let's move on to the next one. So this is the dissolution of a particular salt and a solvent. And he says for this particular process, delta H is greater than 0, which means it is an endothermic process. Supposing you must have seen this, ammonium chloride, when it is added to water, the sides of the test tube become cooler. So that means it is an endothermic process. So if that is the case, what would be the change in the solubility of the substance on increasing the temperature at equilibrium? If you increase the temperature, what happens to the solubility? Should it increase or decrease, remain same? It cannot be predicted. According to Le Chatelier's principle, what do? If it is an endothermic process, increase in temperature will favor the process. So if you increase the temperature, solubility must increase, isn't it? The process will be, or equilibrium shifts in the forward direction, because in the forward direction, energy is absorbed. Whatever energy that you supply, it will be absorbed. So it has to shift in the forward direction. So therefore, increases the solubility. Increase in temperature increases the solubility, right? That is the correct option. Any doubt? Okay, fine. Which of the following is a colligative property? Very simple, easy one. Vapor pressure is not a colligative property because different solutions or different liquids will have different vapor pressure. Freezing point is not a colligative property. Osmotic pressure, yes. Okay. Osmotic pressure is a colligative property. Why? Vapor pressure is not a colligative property because it depends on the nature of the solvent. Methanol and water, if you keep at the same temperature, methanol will have higher vapor pressure because it depends upon the strength or magnitude of intermolecular force. Okay? Boiling point, water and methanol, both will have not the same boiling point, isn't it? They will have different boiling points. And hence, it depends upon the nature of the liquid. However, elevation in boiling point, that is a colligative property, not boiling point alone. Elevation in boiling point is a colligative property. Similarly, freezing point is not a colligative property. Depression in freezing point, yes. You have to be very careful. Relative lowering of vapor pressure, that is a colligative property. PS0 minus PS divided by PS0 is equal to mole fraction of the solute. This itself depends upon the number, and hence relative lowering of vapor pressure is a colligative property. Relative lowering is the one, not the vapor pressure as such. Delta TB is equal to KB into molality. Molality depends upon the number of particles. Therefore, this is a colligative. Similarly, delta TF is a colligative property, Kf into molality. However, osmotic pressure pi is equal to CRT. This is a colligative property. Okay? Any doubt here? Correct option is option 2. Let's move on to the next one. This one. What will be the ratio of colligative properties of 1 molal aqueous solutions of NaCl, Na2SO4, K4, FeCN6, assuming 100% dissociation? That is correct, because let's see whether it is correct or not. I don't know, we will see. So after complete dissociation, you have taken 1 molar solution, means 1 mole of these solutes in 1 kg of the solvent. So after dissociation, NaCl would give you 1 mole of Na plus and 1 mole of Cl minus. So 2 moles of ions it becomes. This will give after dissociation 2 moles of Na plus 1 mole of SO4 2 minus. So this will give 3 moles. What about this K4 FeCN6? When you put it in water, 4 K plus ions plus FeCN6 4 minus 5 ions. So therefore it has to be 2:3:5, option 3. That's correct. So this one. Any doubt? Yeah. Take up the next one. Which of the following solutions possesses highest freezing point? Yes.
Option 1, ma'am.
Option 1, that's correct. Because in all the other cases, dissociation happens, more number of ions will be formed. So this will be after you put it in water, it becomes 0.02 moles. This will become 0.03 moles. This will become 0.05 moles. More the number of ions, more is the depression in freezing point, and lower will be the freezing point. So this one will have only 0.01 moles of particles and hence has the highest freezing point. That's correct. Yeah. Liquid A and B form an ideal solution at constant temperature. The mole fraction of the liquid A in the vapor phase is 0.4 and its partial pressure is 400 millimeter. Then what is the partial pressure of B? How do you do this? Liquid A and B form an ideal solution. The mole fraction of A in the vapor phase. So YA you can write just to not to get confused if you use X. So YA is equal to 0.4. So therefore YB should be equal to 1 minus 0.4. This is in the vapor phase, it will be 0.6. And he says PA, partial vapor pressure of component A, is equal to 400. So therefore, in the vapor phase, when you substitute this, YA should be equal to partial pressure of A divided by P total. Okay, so you can find out P total from this. So P total should be equal to PA divided by YA. So which will be equal to 400 divided by 0.4, which should be 1000. Am I right? So P total is 1000. Now you use the other equation. What is the partial pressure of B? You are supposed to find. So you know YB. YB will be equal to PB divided by P total. So therefore PB should be equal to P total is 1000 into mole fraction of the other component is 0.6. So it will be 600 mm. So correct option is option 1. Okay. Any doubt here? Done? Yes. Let's move on to the next question. This liquids A and B form an ideal solution. The mole fraction of A in the solution is 0.6. The vapor pressure of A and B are 125 and 62.5 mm respectively. Then their mole fractions in the vapor phase are respectively. So how do you do this? Mole fraction of A in the solution is equal to 0.6. Therefore, mole fraction of B has to be 1 minus 0.6, which will be 0.4. And he says the vapor pressure of A and B, pure A and B of course, is given to you. Okay. And therefore you can find out P total. So P total should be equal to mole fraction of A into PA0, which is 125, plus mole fraction of B, which is 0.4, into its PB0, which is 62.5. So when you do the calculation, 0.6 into 125, I think you will get 75. Am I right? Is it 75? 75 plus 0.4 into 62.5, you will get this as 25. Isn't it? So this should come out as 100. P total is 100. Once you know the P total, then you can find the, and PA is known to you, which is 75, PB is known to you, 25, and you know the total vapor pressure. So therefore, YA, vapor pressure of, mole fraction of A in the vapor phase should be equal to its partial pressure, which will be 75 divided by total vapor pressure, 100. So this will be 3 by 4, which will be equal to 0.75. So the other one has to be, YB should be equal to 0.25. Correct. Option 4. Okay. Hope all of you understood this. Move on to the next one. Which of the pairs of solutions form an ideal solution? Yes, ideal solution. What are the characteristics? A, B, that is these interactions, A interactions, B interactions, and AB interactions. All the three must be of almost same magnitude. Delta H mixing is equal to 0.
Benzene and toluene, ma'am.
Yes, mixing is equal to 0. Benzene and toluene, that is correct. That will form an ideal solution. Can you give me any other example? Benzene, toluene is correct. Chlorobenzene and bromobenzene, they also will form close to ideal behavior because of similar kind of interactions. N-hexane and N-heptane, yes, that will form an ideal solution. Chloroethane and bromoethane, they will also form, okay? So what about the first one? Chlorobenzene and chloroethane, what kind of interactions they will have? Chlorobenzene and chloroethane, both of them are polar, but the magnitude is very much different, isn't it? So when you mix them together, so chlorobenzene will have stronger interactions, isn't it, with the other one? Perhaps it will show you negative deviation. What about HCl and water? What kind of deviation?
Non-ideal.
In fact, this one will show you negative deviation because chlorobenzene will have
Yeah, ma'am.
stronger interaction. Chloroethane will have. Which of these two? Very important concept. Take up the first one. Let me rub off this. This one. Chlorobenzene and chloroethane. Chlorobenzene is
They are non-ideal solution, ma'am.
yeah, CH3, CH2, Cl. Which of these two, in which these two cases, CCl bond is more polar? Whether it is in chlorobenzene or chloroethane. More polar CCl bond. This is sp2 carbon. This is sp3 carbon, isn't it? sp2 carbon is little more electronegative. So therefore, this bond will be less polar. This will be more polar. So therefore, when you mix this into this, the interaction, new interactions formed will be weaker and hence shows positive deviation. What about HCl and water? What kind of deviation? Negative deviation, very good. Because of dehydration of Cl minus and H plus ions, very good. Acetone and chloroform?
They also negative, ma'am.
Negative deviation because hydrogen bonding is a new interaction that is formed. Very good. Okay. Clear all the drawings. Go to the next one. Yes. What will be the value of want of factor I if FeCl3 ionizes 90% in the solution? Okay. FeCl3, if you put it in water, it will give Fe3 plus ions plus 3 Cl minus ions. Supposing you have taken 1 mole of this. 90% dissociation means if you have taken 100 moles, 90 moles will dissociate. You have taken only 1 mole. So 90 divided by 100. 0.9 mole will be dissociated and you will be left with 1 minus 0.9. So this will be 0.9 moles. This will be 3 into 0.9 moles. So this will be 2.7, isn't it? So what is the total number of moles? N total should be equal to 1 minus 0.9 plus 0.9. You have to add all the 3 plus 2.7. This will get cancelled. 1 plus 2.7, it will be 3.7, isn't it? Yeah, 3 points. So therefore, your I value should be equal to 3.7 is the one after dissociation. Before that, you had taken only 1 mole divided by 1, 3 points. Correct? This is the one. Fine, good. Any doubt here?
No.
All of you followed this? If it is difficult for you to follow, You can even use alpha and then finally substitute. How do you use alpha? FeCl3, same procedure, put it in water, it gives Fe3 plus 3Cl minus. 1 minus alpha, this will be alpha, this will be 3 alpha. So N total should be equal to 1 minus alpha plus 3 alpha. So this will get cancelled, you will get 1 plus 3 alpha. Alpha is given to you 0.9%, 90%, which means out of 1 it will be 0.9. So alpha is equal to 0.9. Substitute here, you will get the same answer, isn't it? Then I will be equal to number of moles after dissociation, divided by number of moles which you have taken before. Before you have taken only 1 mole. After that you are getting 1 plus 3 alpha divided by. This is the value of it. Okay. Now I think all of you followed this. So correct option is option 3. I think we can take one more and then we can stop. What will be the mole fraction of solute in an aqueous solution of a substance having strength 4.5 molal? 4.5 molal means 4.5 moles in 1 kg of the solvent or 1000 gram of the solvent. Aqueous solution means the solvent has to be water. Okay, 4.5 moles in 1000 gram of the solvent, in this case water. Okay, so therefore mole fraction of the solute 0.75 you get. Let's check it out. 4.5, that is the number of moles divided by 4.5 plus 1000 divided by 18. So this will be 4.5 divided by 4.5 plus 55.55. So when you do the calculation, you will get 0.075. That's correct. Okay, 0.075. Fine. This is option. I think next one is also a simple one. All of you got this? Any doubt here? Yes, from all the students? Okay, good. Very nice. This, of course, all of you know how to do this, isn't it? Density of 98%. Weight by weight H2SO4 is 1.8 gram. Molarity of the solution is. Quickly, let's do it, and then we will stop. 98% weight by weight means 98 gram of H2SO4 in 100 gram of solution. Okay, so therefore density is given to you. Molarity, you need volume. Volume is equal to density is mass by volume. So volume should be equal to mass divided by density, which will be mass is 100 gram of the solution, 1.8. You can substitute here. So therefore molarity should be equal to 98 is the molar mass of H2SO4. So 98 divided by 98, you will get 1 mole. So let's substitute it as 1 mole itself. So 1 mole divided by volume of solution is 100 divided by 1.8 into 1000. So when you do this, you will get this as 1.8 into 10, which will be 18. Okay, so in the next session also we will be